my passion is to understand our scriptures through the neuroscience angle, and also understand what is happening right now in the research, in the field of neuroscience research, to understand that from the scriptural perspective, because there is so much going on which is parallel and so much in confluence, both our scriptural knowledge and the scientific field, and that is what has become my passion. So, and even more than that, it's, several years back I used to say, I'm here to share my knowledge, is how I would start off. But these days, I have grown, I have evolved. You can see by the gray hair wisdom, with all humility, I can say. Now I say, I'm here to share my joy of understanding both scriptures and recent research that's happening in neuroscience. I think this is one of my favorite topics. And thanks to Ramaa, she really wanted something to do with Upanishads, and again from a neuroscientific angle, not just from scriptural angle. So if you're here to thinking that there is going to be a lot of shlokas and then I'm going to quote a lot of Upanishads, don't hold on to that, because that you can get in books and on internet. So the main focus of today's interactive session is going to be understanding Upanishads at a meta level, at a higher level, either from the logical angle, or it's definitely going to be a reflective session. And then it's all about meta level, means understanding ourselves, right? So what is our ability? Our ability to reason out ourselves, to understand ourselves. And also, many a times, it might seem like paradoxical. That is what the highest Upanishad message is, that it seems paradoxical, but it never is. So if at all, if anything, this session will make you think deeper. And that's what I'm hoping for. So you can stop me and ask questions in the middle, and I will take a call whether to answer it right away or whether it can wait. So with this introduction, let's just move on. This next 1 hour or so, it's going to be both a right-brained approach and a left-brained approach. Upanishad is all about left-brained approach. If it is highly scientific and highly logical too. So I'm going to bring in some either stories or poems. And I thought about you, and I have brought in a very short Kannada poem too at the end. So let's have both the right-brained approach and left-brained approach to this. I'm going to play this song. Hopefully, let's see. Oh. Sure, many of you would have heard this, right? If you can understand even bit of Sanskrit, it's a very simple, universal peace song. And I have used this song many a times when I was in this country, and any of you need this song as a secular bhajan or song representing peace for the entire humanity. This is one of the songs that bhajans that you can choose. Anybody who had heard this song bhajan earlier?
Yeah.
Of course, right? Yeah. For some of you, I just want to give you some background about this. This particular bhajan was sung by Bharataratna M.S. Subbulakshmi at the UNO in 1966, as I said, it's on its 50th anniversary of UN. And this was composed specifically for M.S. Subbulakshmi by the Paramacharya of Kanchi. And this was composed by the Ragamalika, composed by Vasant Desai. Vasant Desai, he has composed for many of the Hindi movie songs along with, I think, Shantaram. So he was very popular at that time. And let's get into the meaning of this and then it will make sense. It says, you serve with friendship and humility with everyone, which will conquer the hearts of everyone. That's the first line. And then look upon others as thyself. Renounce war. It says, Yuddham tyajata, spardham tyajata. Renounce war. Renounce competition for power. And give up aggression on others. And our Mother Earth is here to fulfill all our desires, just like the Kamadhenu, the mythological figure Kamadhenu. And God is compassionate to all. And he says, you people of this world, restrain yourself. He says, restrain yourself. And not only that, donate. And not only that, and be kind. And of course, the last line you could say, may all people be happy and prosperous. Very simple meaning to this. But what is unique about this is this bhajan is based on a story that is said in one of the Upanishads. That to Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. I don't know if you know, each Upanishad represents or is represented by a story. Usually, I'm not going into the fundamentals of Upanishad. We all know Upanishad is also called Vedanta, and the literal meaning for Vedanta, it comes at the end of Vedas. Upanishad is like rishis and students sitting close to each other and learning through dialogues, not monologue, with questioning and answering through dialogues. And it is highly logical. If you really go deep into Upanishad, it says it's, of course, we can take it as faith based, but it is not just based on faith. You can question anything and everything, and there are answers to that. And the three main acharyas, Shankaracharya, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya, have written commentaries on this. They have thought about all the questions that anybody could ask, and they have asked the questions themselves, and they have written the answers. That's why it's called bhashya in Sanskrit. So this bhajan, which is based on the story that is in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, is based on this line: restrain yourself, donate, and be kind. Why? How did this come about? As the story goes, this actually represents three types of people: devas, and then human beings, Manushya, and then demons, Rakshasas, you might say. Three different groups of people, right? They all go to what they call as Prajapati or God. In each Upanishad, they give different names for either God or whatever. And then in this particular Upanishad, it says they go to Prajapati and then ask. They would have finished all their education, Gurukula style. And before going back, they go to Prajapati and ask, give us the ultimate message. What do we have to take home message, if I may? And Prajapati says, da, da, da. Says da for all the three. And each group of people, devatas, take this da, what it means, what it symbolizes in their own way. So do the human beings, and so do the demons. And the devatas, they think, oh, they have everything, right? Just like us, we are in modern day devatas. We have everything in excess, we have everything in plenty. So they think, oh, dha means damyata, as it said in the song. Dhamma means restrain your senses. So we need to restrain our senses, is what they take that message that symbolizes da, representing damyata, dhamma. And then the human beings say, oh, you know what? We are too stingy. We keep everything for ourselves. We don't share usually. We keep mostly for ourselves. So he is saying da means dana. We need to share, not just donate, share with others. Everything we need to be sharing. So that is what they took that message. Da is danam, sharing. And the demons, what did they take? Damyata, dana, and daya. Demons, as you know, they are very aggressive and not too kind on others. So they say da means daya. That means we need to be more compassionate. So the same word da, same message given to three groups of people, and they take whatever they needed. And this is the neatest thing. They all knew what was lacking. What is it that they need to improve? What is their strength and what is their weakness? They knew that. And so they took this message. So this whole bhajan is based on that. The reason I am starting with this is, again, to give a story for an Upanishad, give this as a foundation. And not only that, this whole 1 hour's interaction is going to be based on how can we implement this Upanishad message in our day-to-day lives. That's the most important. So, earlier days we had separate devatas, human beings, and demons. Not anymore. All the qualities of all the three groups of people, what is said in our mythology and such thousands of years back, all of those qualities are within us. Then not three different groups of people. At times, many a times, if we are really stressed out, we cannot even be compassionate with our own family members or with our colleagues. This is the name of the game. And no matter how much we have, at times, especially if we are fearful about the future, no matter how much we have, it is never enough. So it is difficult for us to share with our own people. And of course, we don't have to say anything about the Dhamma or Damyata part. We are all devatas having things in excess. And how do we restrain ourselves? How do we restrain our senses? It's not the giving freedom for the senses, but giving freedom or taking freedom from the senses. So this actually sets up the pace about how do we implement any of the Upanishad message in our day-to-day lives. And again, I'm going to end with even more simpler and practical ways to be implementing this Upanishad message in our day-to-day lives. So this bhajan actually represents our evolution of mind. Our mind acts like devatas at times, like human beings, and like demons all the time. And even to understand Upanishad, that set of shlokas, they will not change. Whether you look at it from different philosophical angles, the Upanishads won't change. But depending on our evolution of mind, we will be able to grasp and understand the Upanishad message. That's why we have many different angles of interpreting the Upanishad. So if you really look at it from the angle of how can I evolve myself? How can I keep my mind at a higher level so that I'll be able to understand this essence of this bhajan? Look upon others as thyself. This is even said in Christianity, as we know, right? What does that mean, thyself? Who are we? That is what we're going to find out. And in general, if I just have to say two things before going into the rest of the session, one basic aspect of Upanishad is understanding the relationship between us as jivas or as beings and the relationship with God, Jivatma or the Paramatma, and the world. So, understanding the relationship between us and what we call as God and the entire world is the essence of Upanishad. If you just have this understanding, this is enough. And what I'm going to do is I've just collected several of the quotes that represent again the essence of it for us to be able to implement. And as I said, I will bring in the evolutionary strategy, how the evolution of human beings into this picture, so that we can see how we can evolve our mind to be able to understand this Upanishad message so that we can put it into make it practical. So it is nothing but practical Vedanta is what we're going to be discussing the next hour or so. And you can stop, as I said, anytime that you would like. So we're going to look at this Upanishad from the evolution of our brain and our mind itself. So what is the essence of Upanishad? It is to express the eternal truth. Eternal truth means it's for everybody and it won't change. That eternal truth will not change from time to time. That is constant. In terms of the scientific rational thought patterns, and to show how, in the light of those truths, human life and our society can be elevated to a higher level of culture, harmony, and fulfillment. Ultimately, we should be moving towards living a life out of fulfillment. Initially, we will be living our lives towards fulfillment or leading a life for fulfillment. But eventually, we will come to a stage that we will lead a life with fulfillment. So, Ranganathanandaji, Swami Ranganathanandaji, he was the 13th president of Ramakrishna Order. And by the way, I will be taking quite a few quotes of either some of the monks of Ramakrishna Order or what Vivekananda has said. And not just that, I'll also bring in other religions too, as you will see. But the reason I have taken Vivekananda's or some of the monks of Ramakrishna Order, not for any other reason, not because I'm following that, only because it was Swami Vivekananda in this day and age who made this Vedanta or Upanishad practical. And not only practical, that we're all able to study, read these scriptures. Until then, the study of these Upanishads was only restricted and limited to smaller groups of people, maybe just rishis and saints, or only for a small group of certain types of people, what they would call Brahmins. I'm not talking from just the caste perspective. Those who study Brahman are Brahmins. So from that perspective, we can take. So it was restricted only for Brahmins. Only Brahmins would be allowed to study. But Swami Vivekananda, just about 150 years back, made not only this Vedanta practical, but he opened it up so anybody and everybody could study, because this is our birthright. What is Upanishad? It is talking about ourselves. What else can be closest to ourselves other than knowing ourselves, right? It's all about knowing ourselves. So this Swami Ranganathanandaji is also the cultural ambassador for India. This was in 1960s and 70s, and he visited, 80, 90 countries to spread the Upanishad message. And what is really astonishing is Swami Ranganathanandaji, he didn't even go to college. And he could remember all the shlokas of Bhagavad Gita, all those 700 and some shlokas he knew by heart, and then all the Upanishad message without even going to college. Or maybe that is why he could do that. Not that whoever does not go to college will be able to do that, but I'm just an interesting tidbit to make it later. Anyway, he says it's a pure message. Upanishad is a pure message of human growth, of human development and human fulfillment. It's a rational philosophy of full human unfoldment and human evolution. There is a science of it. There is a technique of it. And our country has produced two great books in the past which contain this science and this technique, namely the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita, besides a number of other books as well, like even Bhagavatam for that matter. Even that has nothing but Upanishad message, but we only focus on the stories and just get attracted only to the stories, but it's highly symbolic of the Upanishad message. And in this modern age, our country has produced extraordinary personalities who lived and taught this great philosophy, such as Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Sharada Devi, and even more lately, Ramana, could be even Aurobindo. All of such personalities actually lived this philosophy and taught this philosophy. What's interesting is many of them didn't even learn this through the books, but they lived it and they taught others. And that's why, they're called mystics. Whether it's Ramakrishna or Ramana for that matter, they're all called mystics. But these days, mysticism has a bad rep. And the definition of mysticism has changed. And who are mystics? All of that has changed. I'm not going according to the modern day definition of mysticism and who a mystic is, because it's not. The modern day age is something that is nebulous, esoteric, and occult for that matter, and something very supernatural that we cannot. That is not what is mysticism is all about. Mysticism is the belief that direct knowledge of God or the highest spiritual truth or ultimate reality, that ultimate reality means that something that won't change, that can be attained through subjective experience. This is what true mysticism is about. And people like Ramakrishna or Sharda Devi, Vivekananda, of course, he had read many of the Upanishads. Ramakrishna, Sharada, Ramana, all of these people come under mystics because they never read. They couldn't even read for that matter. They didn't go to school, none of that, but they experienced that ultimate truth. And even not just, many people have also experienced. These days, they say you take certain of the quote unquote drugs, and then you can experience that. I'm not talking about experience just once in a while or not, but they lived that kind of life. And not only did they experience, they could also teach it to others. And again, going further, mystics are nothing but they are the ones who believe in unseen realities that is beyond our senses, beyond our mind, that they can actually um, have experienced such things. And um, you know what? We don't realize we also experience that every day we experience, but we don't know that. What do I mean by that? I'll just say this just to pique your interest and then move on. What do I mean? We have also realized this reality, experience God. Every day we do that when we go into deep sleep. That in deep sleep, each and every one of us experience that pure awareness or pure consciousness, or in Sanskrit, what they call it as quote unquote Sat Chit Ananda. That's the shortest definition of God. Sat there is not truth as we think. Sat means that pure existence is what is called Sat there in Satchitananda. Pure existence, and then pure consciousness, and pure bliss, happiness, Ananda, pure Ananda, or absolute existence, absolute consciousness, and absolute happiness or Ananda. So a mystic is one who believes that they can have access to hidden mysteries that transcend ordinary human knowledge. And they also believe that they can actually know God. And by the way, what I said about we can all experience this during deep sleep, this is what is portrayed in one of the Upanishads, one of my favorite Upanishads, which is called Mandukya Upanishad. And that is where they talk about three states of consciousness: the waking state, the dream state, and the deep sleep state. So, the only difference between us when we experience this during deep sleep and somebody like Ramana or Ramakrishna is, even after they wake up, they know this, they remember. Whereas once we wake up, we cannot even remember what that experience is. That is in other words, another way, lighter way of putting it is, we are all kind of, when I say ignorant about this kind of knowledge, we go to sleep ignorant, as ignorant people, and we wake up by again as ignorant people. But in deep sleep, we are very much aware. However, people like these mystics, they go into sleep, or you might call samadhi, even when they are awake or sleep, as ignorant, but they wake up as jnanis, whereas we wake up as ignorant, because either we forget or we cannot put that into practice. So, Swami Bhajanananda is one of the vice presidents of Ramakrishna order. He's very, in simple terms, he puts this. SRK, by the way, I have to tell you a little story behind this. When I put SRK, that represents Sri Ramakrishna. For me, SRK is Ramakrishna. But while I was giving a talk for the people who are about to retire the Indian Army, this was at Kanpur. They have a training center in Kanpur. They said, SRK, SRK said this. I said, of course. And then I did not know at that time who SRK was and how popular he was as a movie actor. And then I came to know. But now, knowingly, I put that to bring a smile. But anyway, and then I said, my SRK is Ramakrishna, is I would say that. Anyway, so if you look at the life of Ramakrishna and Vivekananda, Ramakrishna showed us through his life how uh, the humanity aspect of God, because he just lived, quote unquote, if you just look at it in a superficial way, just like anybody else, right? So it just the humanity of God, if you need to know, you should understand the life of Ramakrishna. Whereas Swamiji here represents Vivekananda. Vivekananda showed the divinity of man, how divine we are in his experience, in his talks, and especially in West, when he came to West, when he showed humans the divinity of man, whereas Ramakrishna showed the humanitarian aspect of God. It's a beautiful comparison, and both were needed. Both were needed for all of us to be able to understand. So, with this, I'm going to move on to one of the stories. You probably know, but would like to talk about that again to in context. But until then, any questions that you may have, or can I move on? Anybody on the chat? Anybody else?
No questions.
No questions. Okay. So we'll move on. We'll start off with a story again to understand our true nature. We know this story, and it brings a smile on our faces, when we hear this. Again, story, we can hear it as many number of times as we want. This is the story about, again, a sadhu and his students. The sadhu sends these students to a different sadhu who lives a little bit far away, and then he says, go learn from that other sadhu, and they come back. And then he picks one of the students and says, you are the leader, and then you have to make sure everybody is okay. And then he sends them off. And there's a little bit of waterways, a small a river they needed to cross to go to the other village where the other sadhu resided. And this was a very shallow kind of a place. So they cross the river, they go, and then they learn whatever they needed to learn from the other Swamiji, and they come back. On their way back, they see that this it had rained heavily, and there was a lot of water in this stream, not even a river. So it was quite difficult for them to cross. They had to swim and cross this little stream, and they all tried to hold hands and then try to be together. But somewhere along the line, it was so turbulent, and then they got separated, and of course somehow they came to the other side of the stream, and they wanted to make sure that nobody got lost while crossing this stream. So the leader, he has to make sure everybody was there. And so he said, all of you stand in line. I want to make sure everybody is around. So he started counting, and then he counted all the people, and he said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. My goodness, we lost one person, his things. You know this story, right? And then, of course, no, you have not done it properly. And then the other person comes, and then he also counts, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then they were quite close to the ashram, and that the sadhu is looking at his own students, and he knows what has happened. He let them have. He was having fun because he could see he could clearly know what was happening. And they were kind of so much in sorrow. After a while, the sadhu comes and says, what's the matter? And then they recite the whole thing. No, let me help you. Go stand in the line. And then, of course, he counts, and then, the rest of the picture. It brings a smile on our face. How this in Kannada, we had heard this as a Gamparu story, right? If you can remember. So it brings a smile on our face, but many a times when it comes to spiritual knowledge, we are also like those 10 students, We are looking for that 10th man. Where is the 10th man? Forgetting to count ourselves. So this is, you know the story, but I'm going to give a little different version of this and then say, imagine this is IKEA, right? So furniture, you can probably count each one as one unit. When you count, how many do you see? 10 pieces of furniture, right? And how do IKEA get this? And then, or any shop for that matter, we have this closed circuit camera, right? Through that is what we can get this. So if I have to say, count everything that you see in that room, or this is the picture that we see, we count, and then we see 10 or whatever the case may be, right? But how did we get this picture? Who is taking that? It's the camera that we forget, because we cannot see the camera in the picture. Isn't it so? So the 10th object in the room is the security camera. But the camera cannot record itself. And so it doesn't appear in the picture. And so it is not a countable piece of furniture, countable object. But because of the camera, you could see all of this. Isn't it so? But can we see the camera? We cannot see. It is not a countable object. That is how it is when we are kind of trying to understand that God through ourselves. It is the very essence of not just us, about everything. But yet, we cannot put our finger. We cannot experience. We cannot. Intellectually, we understand. We can repeat all of this, but to be able to experience. And this is where, especially now, we're at the crossroads. This is what in neuroscience we call this as hardcore of consciousness. That's the problem of consciousness, hardcore consciousness, because the definition of consciousness, as scientists say, is very different from what Upanishads definition of consciousness itself. I shouldn't just say definition of consciousness, I should say definition of absolute consciousness. Whereas this definition of the scientists of consciousness, what the Upanishad terms that as reflected consciousness. What we have, what we are perceiving right now, this consciousness is reflected consciousness of the absolute consciousness that is, cannot even say that is everywhere. Everywhere means maybe somewhere else it is not there. No, because again, if you say it is everywhere, everywhere means space, right? Then that means consciousness is inside the space, but it's not so. Space is in consciousness. It's the difference between how we can perceive space and consciousness and space altogether. So this, what scientists are looking at is that reflected consciousness, what in Sanskrit terms it is called chidabhasa. But in Upanishads, what we talk about is that absolute pure consciousness, which is reflected consciousness, is a reflection of that, not the original consciousness. This is where we are at loggerheads. For some reason, for me, it is very, very simple to get this. You're looking at the reflection, and so you're making evaluations on that. Yes, you can make evaluation on the reflected consciousness, never on the absolute consciousness. Just like how we cannot see the camera, but we know that the camera exists only because of the picture itself, right? But that's somewhere we are kind of missing out. Or another way of saying that is, it's impossible to be evaluating that pure consciousness because it is the subject itself. We being objects cannot evaluate the subject itself, is another way of putting it. So this is kind of where I meant by it is seemingly paradoxical, but it is not. But this is how it is in scripture. Somewhere along the line, we need to take that leap of faith to be able to really kind of get it. And we have gotten it. That is why we are kind of here somewhere, not just in deep sleep, somewhere when we even go in an intellectual way, we know that there is something else, whatever you may want to call God or source or soul, spirit, it does not matter. Each religion will call it by different name. None of that kind of really matters. But we know that there is something. And that is why we are kind of here to understand and go deeper. Of course, when we just look at it from philosophical perspective, it's always the bookish knowledge. For me, at a personal level, that is great as a philosophy professor, or it's great as an intellectual stimulation, and to be able to just have stimulating conversation. But for me as a scientist, everything has to be practical. Until and unless we make it practical, it's only going to be like bookish knowledge, right? So we're going to, again, setting the foundation to see how we can make this practical in our day-to-day lives.
Yeah. Before you move to the
yes,
we're talking about consciousness, right? So you were mentioning consciousness in the sense of space, that is it, correct?
But no, the other way around. Space is in consciousness.
Because I don't know, to me, whenever I think of consciousness, it is something self that is there. So how do you explain that? When we think of consciousness as self versus outer soul, it is one like.
No. That's no. When you say consciousness as self, that is what I'm talking about. That same whatever consciousness which is there everywhere is also inside us, right? That is what you're calling it as self. That's where we're coming to make it practical. So that is the jivatma. If you have to take, again, technical terms, jivatma is that self what you're talking about. So same consciousness is self, is jivatma. But now when I said space is inside consciousness, I'm talking about quote unquote, just by using the technical term, that is that Brahman, not even Paramatma, Brahman, not the four-headed Brahma, but the Brahman, which is again nameless and formless. Brahman. Another way of understanding that is there is no space where Brahman is not. If you can show me subspace where there is no Brahman, again is that nameless, formless form of God. That is the highest Upanishad, the terminology that they gave. There cannot be, because there is a syntax error even in that, if you really go deep, because space and time came after what we see this as world, manifested world. We cannot even use the word creation. We cannot say created world. We use it in a loose term, but when you really go into the highest Upanishad, they won't even use the word creation, because the world is not created. It has been projected, or it is manifested. So before the manifestation of this world, or the projection of this world, is where I'm talking about that nameless, formless. And then what we call it as space after this manifestation of world, those are all terms that we as human beings have created, right? Time. We have created time, concept of time, the concept of space, because space is only one. If you think about it, there cannot be two spaces. There is only one space. We put walls, we put different things, and then confine that one space into smaller spaces, that's all, smaller units. Another way of understanding this is the typical example that they gave in Upanishad, call it Ghata Akasha and then Maha Akasha. Akasha means what we know as sky. Akasha is sky. That's a literal meaning. Akasha means space, not just the sky that we see. As soon as we say sky, we see up. But the same sky is everywhere too, right? So space, Mahakasha and Ghatakasha. Ghata means a pot. The space that is contained within the pot is nothing but the Mahakasha, the space outside. It's only the pot that is differentiating the two spaces. If you remove the form of the pot, there is no differentiation of Ghata Akasha and then Maha Akasha, right? It's one and the same. Another way of looking at it, the same thing is take the same pot and then immerse it in ocean. It's the same ocean, the water, sea water that is in the pot. But we say this is the pot, water in the pot. It's the same water that is both inside and outside. It's only that pot is differentiating. Okay. So another word that they say is called this a satyasya satyam. Here it is satyam, here is truth. Truth is of the nature of pure consciousness, which is infinite in dimension. And this truth is not something far away, high up in the sky, or outside the cosmos, but is close to us. It is something ever present in the silent depths of our own soul. And when we realize this truth, something great happens to you, and you become blessed and fearless. And God is presented in the Vedanta as your own self, as you're talking about it, Ramaa. And the dearest of the dear, that same God, what we think is again represented within ourselves as the self. So this realization is our birthright, whether we know it or not. This is our birthright of every human being. And you know what? The nature has given us the cerebral capacity, the organic capacity, the cerebral capability to seek and realize that satyasya satyam, the ultimate truth. This is kind of what he said is Brahmavaloka Dhishanam. It's said in Bhagavatam. That means only humans have this capability to realize this truth. As far as we know, not animals. They cannot comprehend. We will go into that. And when we go into evolution, when we go into the Purusharthas, we will know only humans have this capability to realize this ultimate truth. Because our brain and our mind our brain is evolved, but we need to evolve our mind. The brain is evolved in all human beings, but it's a software, the mind. We need to evolve our mind to be able to realize that truth. We're going to get into that in a few minutes. So another way of putting this is Swami Vivekananda.
I have to go pick up my daughter, so I'll join on Zoom. Thank you. Very nice.
So again, here the different levels, I mean, in Upanishad, right? And ultimately, this is how even Vivekananda puts it, but not just Vivekananda, even earlier people also said that, but he has made it simpler for us in this day and age for us to understand. This is what has been said by our rishis. See, if there is only Brahman that is present, that is that ultimate truth, then there cannot be something else, right? Opposite of that. So we are not moving from falsehood to truth, but we are moving from lower truth to higher truth, not from error to truth. Lower truth to higher truth. And of course, there is no, even the science says now, there is no difference between mind, matter, and the spirit. They're only different phases of expressing the one. The easiest way to understand is ice cube, water, and steam, how they're different forms. Each one is subtler than the other. That is how mind, matter, and spirit or consciousness is all about. And Upanishad does not refer to any one particular book, but it comes through the knowledge. Only later, Vedavyasa was the one who codified and classified all the Vedas and Upanishads and then made it into different categories. But until then, it was transferred from one person to another. That is why it's called as Shrutis. Shrutis are the highest scriptural knowledge that you can say. And then the thing lower than the Shruti is what we call as Smrutis. And then even lower than that is the Puranas.
What is an example of Smriti?
Smriti, for example, is Bhagavad Gita is Smriti. And even the Vedas that we recite Patana, we do the Veda Patana, they all come under Smritis. But the Upanishad part of the Vedas, this is also Vedas, Upanishad part of Vedas come under Shruti.
Any other examples of Shruti?
Bhagavad Gita, and then Bhagavata come under lower than Smriti.
That's Purana.
Yeah, Puranas. And then historical Ramayana and Mahabharata.
It's again under the classification. Purana.
Yeah. So, okay, this is Bertrand Russell, by the way, in his book on impact of science on society. He says, unless man increases in wisdom as much as in knowledge, this increase of knowledge will be increase of sort. We are all facing that. Every generation we face this, and especially now with the technology, especially AI technology, we can see how it's a double-edged sword, and such statements make so much sense, And look at this, whether it's Moses or Buddha, Ramakrishna, or Jesus, Ramana, they all carried their lives to the highest level. We saw that these are all mystics. They could experience, and the energy that they manifested was unlimited, and it was of a different dimension. And those energies that you see, it is passing through even centuries, millennia for that matter. They have passed, and their energies are still working, whether it is Jesus or Moses or Buddha. They all, in a different way, they're all mystics because they were able to experience and live that kind of life. Only then can we understand. Otherwise, all these Upanishads and Vedas would have been just textual knowledge. And we can understand Upanishads only by going through the lives of such mystics. At least that is what has happened to me. I was studying Upanishads while I was here, and then I would study, get books, many books from India, and then you get stuck, and then you would not know how to go, pierce through that doubt and then go through. But later on, after I started going deeper into Ramakrishna's life, and even then I could not. One of the senior Swamijis actually taught me, and another doctor, and he just spoke about his life, made us understand what his life represented. Because even if you just read his book, it's called actually Gospel of Ramakrishna, or in Kannada it is called Vachana Veda. Vachana means what you speak. Veda means Vedas. So whatever he has spoken is like Vedas, is what they say. Even then, I couldn't understand. They needed somebody to decipher the life, how it represented the Upanishad message. So once I started understanding his life, I could actually understand the Upanishads. Wherever I got stuck, I was able to understand and then overcome those doubts. That is the power of their lives. And not just, I'm not talking about Ramakrishna. So is many of the mystics for that matter. Even if you just study Saint Francis of Assisi life, it is going to be the same. Ramana's life you read, and then it would be the same. They're all kind of realized souls, and that is the power of their life, the energies that they emanate, and it carries through. That's why, the message, it, whatever they have said, hundreds of years back, thousands of years back, and it is still so relevant, and we are still understanding, reading, and whatnot. And I'm not just talking about our scriptures. Any religious scripture that you take, such is the power of, you would say, that ideal truth. Okay. Now we're going to get into the scientific part. If you have any questions until now, because we're going to move to a little different angle now. Before that,
Just want to ask if somebody wants to take a break.
Yeah.
Some
Sure.
questions to just have some.
Absolutely.
Anybody wants some snacks or some coffee from something you would like? Okay. Let me just wait. Can I get you something? A center light. Yeah, you can see. Center light. How can I go see?
Yeah, he is. He is.
Tea. Good.
Sir, actually, chai.
Huh?
Chai.
No, he doesn't. I will pause the recording for a few minutes.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Anybody else would like some for tea? Snacks?
Yes.
There's some secondary tea.
What is the name of that bhajan, the one that you played in the very beginning?
Starts with Maitrim Bhajata
Yes.
by MS Subbulakshmi.
Yeah, Maitri.
Maitrim Bhajata.
My theme is friendship.
Yeah.
Can you clarify Jiva? Jiva.
Jivatma. We are all Jivatmas. Because whenever in the body, mind form, we are all different Jivatmas. That is.
You call it as Panchakosha and Jivatma.
Yeah, Panchakosha is a way of representing this body. That's all. The gross level, and then it goes subtler. One way of classification, Panchakosha classification. You can also classify based on the states of consciousness. That's another way of classifying. So it's all different ways of understanding this.
One thing I recently when we die, what goes out of the body? What leaves from the body?
It's only the breath, no, or the prana, you can say. But the quote unquote, that pure existence cannot leave anywhere.
Yes.
There is no other space to go anywhere else. It's always there all the time.
The thing existently pervading.
It's all pervading.
But
Cannot go anywhere.
but everybody says that Atma goes out of the body.
It's at a kindergarten level of saying and understanding. It cannot go anywhere. Where can you go? There is only one space, right?
That's pervading.
With lyrics also.
But it needs this body and mind to act. That is the key. That pure consciousness, what we call as Brahman, it is inert. One of the Swamiji's, it's not my thing, but he says, Brahman is nameless, formless, and useless. Because with it just Brahman as such is Brahman, for Brahman to be animated, to act, then he needs people. And you will see, I'm going to end the talk with the poem. And that represents that. It's beautiful, beautiful. Shall we? Okay. So we're going to get
I
into.
just want to ask if anybody else has questions in the.
Yeah. If anybody has questions online, you may ask now. Or you can write it as a question in the chat box and then you can take it from there. No, no questions, right? Okay. All right. Now, about that song, I said it is about the evolution of mind, right? That Brihadaranyaka story. What do I mean by that? It's just in very simple terms we will understand and see what this is. You know, we as humans, we're called warm-blooded animals or warm-blooded people, right? That means the temperature always remains the same. We have a thermostat, inbuilt thermostat, and we're all thermoregulated. We know this, right? Our temperature remains constant. Think about some of these, and then we will see what I mean by that. And you have heard the term homeostasis. What is that? It's all, we all have as humans, not just humans, even other mammals also, but we're going to talk about as humans because we'll see why I'm not combining other mammals along with humans. You will see in the next few minutes. But the self-regulating processes, as we all have these biological processes, and this is there to maintain stability, not just the temperature. It's also our blood glucose levels, our blood pressure levels. Unless something pathological, we won't get to that stage. No matter what, it might go up or down, but it always comes back to the normal levels, right? That's what the homeostasis mechanism is all about. We all have that as humans. And why do we need this? This, especially the thermostatic mechanism and homeostatic mechanisms, this is a real condition to lead a free life. When I say free life, not what comes to our mind, to be free, or mukti, or salvation, or whatever you would like to use that word. So this is the reason our higher brain is evolved. What we call it as cortex or cerebral hemispheres, different parts of that. You know, in humans, it is so highly developed when compared to even other mammals. Even in mammals, they have the higher center, but it's still rudimentary when compared to how it is developed in humans. Please imagine so much energy would be taken away to be maintaining the temperature, we don't think about these things, right? We don't spend energy. Everything happens in an autopilot mode, automatic manner. Our blood pressure, our blood glucose levels, our body temperature, our pH levels, all of those things, where as long as we're in an healthy state, it is maintained. It's an autopilot mode. What does that mean, autopilot mode? That means it's very efficient. We don't have to think, oh, now I'm feeling a little bit afraid, so my heart rate has gone up, now I have to slow down. We don't do that. Now, forget about that. We breathe all that time. We are unaware of it. Everything happens in an autopilot mode. And why? Why have we asked ourselves? As a scientist, we say, this is the reason. Otherwise, we don't have to struggle like other animals. And there is a reason for it. Yes, definitely to be able to learn calculus and do surgery and whatnot. All of that is true. All of that we are aware of. We are left with this higher brain to be able to acquire the knowledge, the material knowledge. We will see there are two types of knowledge. Yes, that is true. It's all needed for that. But is it just for that? You know, this higher brain, the higher center of the brain, is not just for our survival process. It is evolved for us to be able to understand that you can be free. You don't need to suffer every day-to-day things. Pain is inevitable. But suffering, we can make that optional. That pain we relive by saying it, by talking to others, and by saying, and not only that, at a mental level, we keep suffering at a mental level. Pain could be at a physical level. That suffering, even at the day-to-day level, that is optional. For that we need to use our higher brain. Otherwise, we are on autopilot mode, even on that, and while we suffer. This is at the elementary level to come out of suffering. But it is much more than that. In other mammals, this homeostasis, the thermoregulation, all of that is for their very survival. And for man, it is not for survival. It is for us to evolve. What we call is emancipation or mukti or freedom. These are all technical terms from the scriptures. If you put it in a scientific way, we have this higher center so that we can truly evolve as better human beings. Even animals, they have evolved. Pet animals, you can actually train them, right? You can train them to do whatever you want. Whereas a wild animal, can you do that? No, because even there, they're using their, whatever, it could be rudimentary, that they're using the higher center of the brain to be able to train to whatever you want them to, when compared to the wild animals. And the animals that we see in the circus, they're all trained, not the wild animals. In a similar manner, of course, we have used all of this to be able to train ourselves at a physical level. What is it that we can achieve? At a mental level, how fast can we play a chess game and beat whoever right now is the champion, right? All of that we have used, but we shouldn't stop there. We should go to our birthright to be able to know why do we have all of this, to be able to answer those rudimentary existential questions. That is why this higher brain is evolved. And not just the brain is evolved. We need to evolve our mind to be able to utilize for this purpose. This is the evolutionary significance of the way our brain has developed, especially in human beings. And now it is up to us to train our minds and to make our minds evolve, to see thyself in others, not just as other human beings. That we can do. When it comes to Upanishad, we'll see. When it comes to practical Vedanta, what does Vivekananda say? Not just seeing another human being as human being and then not just not tolerate but accept. That is at a rudimentary level. But can we see that what we're talking about, that Jivatma during the break, that same Atma is in everybody. Yes, at different levels it gets manifested. But can we see that divinity in everyone? That is what that bhajan said. See thyself in others, not just as other human beings, but to see the divine presence in everyone and to be able to. So, what is this higher center of the brain? Yes, as I said, we have mastered in terms of language, memory, reasoning power, paying attention, and to cognize and to comprehend and to reflect on things. And not just that, all of that we need to be able to question ourselves. What is this meaning and purpose of human life itself? Start off with that. What is the purpose, meaning and purpose of human life? And not just stop there. And what is the how about what is my role in this world, in the environment? And of course, we should be able to save our energies and not work on things that are not under our control. Whatever is under our control is what we need to be working on, which means ourselves, right? The only thing under our control, even that we know how tough it is. So that is the evolutionary significance. And how do we attain that? This is the only shloka that I have put, to be honest with you, because it's again highly scientific. It says, Yada panchavatishtante jnanani manasasaha buddhishcha na vicheshtati tamah paramam gatim tam yogamiti manyate. That means when all these 5 organs are made quiet and calm, and the mind is also does not flicker, it's not restless, it's not cross-talking, and even that reasoned intellect becomes steady, absolutely steady. That is the highest state of existence. This is what they call it as flow in these day-to-day lives, right? Mihai, Sid and Mihai is title of the book. Positive psychology, flow state. That's what it is. Yes, you had a question, Ram.
Perhaps the first part of it is easier to get your 5 sense organs to calm down, to get that mind not to work is the hardest.
Yes.
I think anything, your mind just keeps going from one to the other.
Yeah.
So to get that calm, I think that's the hardest.
True. That's why we need to not control, but train. Control we can do just using power without understanding any of this. But to be able to train, that is where this kind of knowledge helps. This is my personal experience. Because as we get older, or sometime or other, the willpower will give in. We cannot just rely on willpower. Very powerful. We need that willpower. But just willpower is not going to be enough. With this kind of knowledge is what is going to help. I won't say make it easier. It will help, especially at times. Because that is the nature of mind. That is the nature of mind. Okay. Now, we have heard this term, right? Purusharthas. These are nothing but human pursuits. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma is the ethical aspect. Artha is that we have to feel secure, safe. Why? All that we, artha does not directly says it's for security. Whatever we work towards, that is for our security. The result of that artha is security, for security. And then kama, the pleasures or the desires, and moksha is the liberation. Let's try and compare between animals and humans about these purusharthas, and then see what is common. See, all animals have this security and kama pleasures. That is common. Animals also have that. Whereas only humans, along with artha and kama, have this capability to be ethical and to be liberated, come out of suffering, and not just come out of suffering. Just the coming out of suffering is not going to be enough. To be able to actively experience that pure joy, not just in deep sleep, but while we are awake too. It's interesting to see this way, how compare with animals. And so, as I was saying, with 2 types of knowledge, 2 types of sciences. The first one is what we call as paravidya, which means this external journey that we all go through, or we do all of this to improve our quality of life. And all the sciences and all the subjects that you can think of would come under this. That's one of the sciences. The other one is going internal. This is the paravidya, to figure out ourselves, who we are, who we truly are, and our relationship with the others and the world, and that. If I just said that, that is enough, I think. Tat is that, right? What is that? So this is where Vedanta or Upanishad helps us to convert our own body into a science lab. This is what actually Swami Ranganatha gives this like a formula. He says, convert your body into a science lab. To experiment on yourselves, not using other external chemicals, with your own thoughts and thought patterns. What you're just talking about, how tough it is to train the mind. Sense organs, it is possible. Sense organs are also, you can say, part of the mind, right? If you can do that, we have done that with the senses, but with that mind chatter, if you can conquer that, or the repetitive thoughts, if you can conquer that, all of that, just by doing the same thing we have been trying, it won't help. That's why Einstein, right? I think it's Einstein who said, you keep doing the same thing, expect a different result. He says that is what's called insanity. And that is what we try and do. Keep doing the same thing again and again, and we cannot. The only way out is through knowledge. Those are tools. We only focus on tools. How to. So we try one thing and it won't work. So we go to another. And then there are many tools. So we're focusing on the tools. But if you go to the why do we have to do this? And even if we lose our cool once in a while or many times, it doesn't matter. But once we know the why, you just come back, take a course and do slight course corrections and then come back if you really know the why. That is the true meaning and the reason why we need to go deeper into this is because of that why. And that is when we can use this body as a science lab, learn how to change the thought patterns, how to change our belief system, and how to change our attitude, not the attitude that we say in English language, that kind of attitude, but a neuroscientific term attitude. How do we perceive things? The attitude, if we change, that is how we can, uh, you know, earlier about 17 years back when I left my job, and then even at that time, before going to India, also I used to say, people used to ask, what are you doing? You're doing so much research, you have left it, and then what are you doing now? And you said, yes, I used to do research with N of whatever number that I would use for each group, N of 10, 20, whatever. Now I'm doing research with N of 1, I would say. They couldn't understand, but that's how I used to explain myself without knowing any of this. I had not gone deeper into any of this, but now it kind of makes sense how whatever I felt inherently, organically, now I'm putting in a different way all of this. That's all we need to do as scientists, N of 1. If you understand this mind, you'll be able to understand everybody else's, because I always say all trained minds will work the same way. In a similar manner, all untrained minds also work the same way. The way if you have certain negative thoughts and negative belief system, how it affects our brain and body, all untrained minds work the same way. The cause of the trigger might be different for different people, but the way it works at a neurological level, neuroscientific level will be the same. Think about that.
I would argue that it is the untrained mind. It's still very different, each one how they would think.
They might think differently, but what happens up here? Actions will be different. But when you think at a neuroscientific level, neurochemical level, at the neuroelectrical level, what happens would be the same. That's what I'm talking about. Right? When you're afraid, what happens to the amygdala? That's what.
When you're talking in terms of the neuroscience levels, it would be good to see when we're talking. Maybe it's too much of a scientist looking at this, but talk about trained and untrained minds. How
But
you do an fMRI, then are there any evidence results like that? That would be a great thing.
Yeah. And also, I
May have
truly
different
believe, you know,
reasons.
there is nothing like a trained mind. We have untrained minds, but it's always a mind in training. That mind training is until our last breath. There is nothing like a trained mind. That is the nature of mind. Can go down like that the next second. And we have to remember, we have the cerebral capability and capacity to bring it up the very next moment all over again. I always say it's always a mind in training.
Can you explain that part? Previous quote.
Oh,
The
the
last one.
great truths are lying hidden in the heart of experience itself. See, this is coming from the way the mystics lived. They would, that, what is the great truth? That unity or that oneness. And they lived their life. And the way they lived their life, they were able to experience that oneness, that unity. We also experience this in pockets, but we don't realize that. That is why we want more of it. That's why we are here. When we raise a child, when we love a baby without any expectation, that unconditional love, when you love a pet, when you love your unconditional pure love is what the statement is about. It is so tough. Many times we don't realize, we think we don't expect anything from anybody. There's always, without our knowledge, at least some kind of an intent. If it is so pure, we would have experienced that. And we have. Many times we have experienced that unconditional love. We know how that feels. It is vachyatita. It's hard to express in words. And we don't even realize, otherwise, that's why it is hard to repeat also. It's kind of, the right word is vachyatita. It is hard to explain and hard to repeat, but it keeps happening. We have tasted that experience, not just in deep sleep, other times also. Otherwise, we would not be here seeking for that. Think about it.
Maybe I'm still looking for an example of it to understand that. Do you have an example to help me?
As I said, raising children without expecting, oh, this child has to take care of me when I retire. No, that thought should not even come. Just love for love's sake. We've done it. Each of us, not just with kids, even with the spouses, we have done. Right? We have felt that. It is innate within us. It is so innate, but it is covered with all our life experiences, what we call it as biases, right? It is covered with many of the biases because of the life experiences. You remove all those biases, what remains is that pure innate feeling, whatever you want to call. Cannot. That's why, if you kind of explain it, it is literally vachyatita. Tita means beyond words. But you can give an example and then see what it is like. I'll give two examples. Again, this story comes in Upanishad, one of the Upanishads only. Again, a student goes to the guru and asks, how is it? What do you mean by that ultimate thing out of which everything comes out? Show me, give me all of that, just like what you asked. He didn't say anything. The guru gives him a seed, banyan seed. And then he said, take out, peel off everything. And then he takes off. what is inside. And then he keeps taking off, he keeps peeling, layer up, whatever he could. And he couldn't find anything. See, out of that comes this banyan tree. Then he was also asking, how can this seed make this huge, one tiny seed can become this huge banyan tree? It's inside. Show me. Take out and see. It is inside. He couldn't see anything, but out of that comes out this banyan tree. Another way of saying is same thing with the onion. You peel off what remains, right? That those layers are nothing but our biases. We call this in scientific ways. Scripturally, we call this chitta shuddhi. This mind is covered with impurities. Impurities because of our life experiences. And you remove those impurities, and what remains is that another way of, again, can only give analogies to understand and nothing else. It's like a mirror. We see ourselves in the mirror. If the mirror is clean, we can see our face very well, right? If the mirror is concave, it is different. If it is convex, it is different. Okay, it's a plain mirror, but it is dusty. We still cannot see our own face clearly. You keep removing the dust. We don't have to do anything. Keep removing those layers of dust. And what we see clearly is what is that inside. So all we need to do is to remove those impurities. In Sanskrit term for that is chitta shuddhi. Here, scientifically, we say there's so many biases. If we keep removing, first we have to recognize those biases, right? We'll always give reason why I feel like this is because we have umpteen reasons, but without giving any reasons, remove all those biases that we have, which is based on this experience. As simple as that. And after we remove all the biases, there is still one thing that remains. Anxiety of unknown future. Cause of that is, again, I call this fear is the mother of all negative emotions. Fear, we have gotten this through evolution, right? Which is very important for our very survival. Fear is important. But that is for survival. That fear is what is preventing us to evolve. Forget about evolve. Even to do few things materially also, that fear prevents us. We don't even know that is fear. We are at the level of anxiety. We don't even know it is anxiety. We just don't do it, that's all. So keep peeling off all of this. And then you still need that willpower to make your mind stable, right? To make your mind stable, you need that willpower. Just willpower is not enough. That is why knowledge like this helps.
There seems to be a
Question. Okay. Okay. So ultimately, this is what it is for me. We have to go through all of this, but at the end, it's not end of the day, at end of life. I know it might feel sound cruel, but in my personal opinion, if you're given us, because I've gone through palliative training to do service in this country. So I've gone quite deep into thinking about this palliative care and whatnot. And I even had given a talk in one of the national conferences in India about quality of death and dying. So you can say, but the reason I'm saying all of this is I've thought about it so much. So I'm not making a statement which might feel cruel. But at the end of life, especially if we are given only so much life to live, I truly feel it's a blessing. Otherwise, we all act as though we're going to live forever. Whatever the time that they would have given, plus or minus, months or years, doesn't matter. But at least we know, we become serious. It is finite. It's a blessing, if you ask me. At that time, do we ever think how big was my house?
Money. Just to change the display.
Yeah.
You keep going.
Sure. And what all the new gadgets that we had, all the new things that come about, right? And then what type of jewelry I had, all of these questions, will it even come into picture? Is it meaningful at all? Does it make sense? All we say is, am I happy? Am I peaceful? Do I need make some amendments? Do my redeem with some of the relationships? Do I amend certain of the relationships? Why did I even feel like that? Why couldn't I even have called one of these family members just because they have treated? These are the thoughts, I would say, just come rather than that can even haunt us. That is the time. Are we peaceful? Are we happy? We know all of this intellectually, but because of the busyness of life, that's why situations like this, it truly helps us. And this will carry through for a while. I know I've gone through this when I was at your stage in my life. So sessions like this will make us think, go deeper, will create more questions. This kind of unrest is good. What I call it as, not just me, somebody else, blessed unrest. And of course, we don't hate anybody, but we don't like. So we try to ignore. We try to avoid certain people, right? It's not hatred, but we don't like. So all of that, can we ultimately convert that into unconditional love and compassion? Ultimately, this is what comes. Nothing about that bucket list, and it starts off like that. But these are the things. Again, for this, the next few slides, we will finish off and then see. It's in a funny way. Again, this is not mine. This is Swami Ranganathanandaji's, in one of his talks, he calls this. Whether we know it or not, each one of us has that mother-in-law in us, the typical whatever, differentiating, whether, take it in a light way, all of us will have that little bit of mother-in-law, if not with the kids, with the friends, whoever it is. All he says is, you know what? You convert that mother-in-law in you into a mother-in-law. These things, I like the way they puts it. That's why I just put it. If you can remember this. The rest of the slides, maybe last 2 or 3, we will be able to.
Can we put that in a different way? It's basically saying convert criticism to acceptance. Love.
Absolutely. Not just tolerate, but accept. Not just adjust, but truly live and accept.
Or rather say, accept the goodness in others. Overlook the fault you feel in others. They say with that.
Yeah. But it's hard,
But
it's easier said than done, but we have to keep saying.
No, according to us, again I'm saying, according to our way of understanding, we
Sorry,
But you
man's
are
most
saying-
comprehensive aim, it's seen not as mere survival, not as numerical increase, not as increased complexity of organization or increased control of the environment, but as greater fulfillment, the fuller realization of more possibilities by the human species, collectively, and more of its component members individually. Once greater fulfillment is recognized in man's ultimate or dominant aim, we shall need a science of human possibilities to help guide the long course of psycho-social evolution that lies ahead of us. So the woman that's speaking.
Yeah, go ahead. Who is this? Can you tell your name and then you read this? Okay. Yeah, any guesses who might have said this? No, it seems like one of the philosophers, but you know who it was? Was that a question? I just read that. I don't know.
Yeah, was it Ritu or Manisha who read that?
Oh, it might have been. I was reading out loud to my son, so I don't know if I went off
Oh,
mute. I
okay.
apologize. But it was
Oh,
I
okay,
just
okay. I
wanted.
thought that you were commenting here.
No, I just love the quote, and my son is studying, and I said, "Oh my gosh, this is so relevant to what he was reading right now." So I was reading it out
Yeah.
loud to him.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
to disturb.
Actually, it is said by a scientist, not a philosopher. It
Oh,
was
okay.
a scientist also. He was also a philosopher. Aldous Huxley. His sons and grandsons are the other Huxleys, biologists that we know of. Your son would have known.
Yeah, I think we see a lot of similarities actually in Elon Musk in some ways, but this is great. Thank you.
Okay. So you heard, she read that. So what we are after is psychosocial evolution, evolution of our mind and social with our relationships. It's only through these two truly can we find that peace and joy, I would say. Yeah, the last several slides. Of course, I cannot go without putting certain Mahavakyas. You have heard the term Mahavakya, right? The Upanishads. There's 4 main Mahavakyas that belong to a particular, come from a particular that you can see here. The one in parenthesis, the name of the Veda that it comes from. And the Upanishad also, it's there. Aitreya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyaka, and Mandukya Upanishad. The Mahavakyas are these: Prajnanam Brahman. Brahman is pure consciousness. This is what it says in Atharva Veda. Atharva Upanishad, Rig Veda. I'm sorry, Aitareya Upanishad and Rig Veda. Tattvamasi is one of the most famous one. Everyone would have heard that thou art. Chandogya Upanishad comes from Samaveda. Aham Brahmasmi, I am that Brahman or I am divine. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad coming from Yajurveda. And I am Atma Brahma is the Atman or the self is Brahman. This is what you were again talking about, that consciousness. It comes from the Mandukya Upanishad, comes from the Atharva Veda. And Mahavakyas are nothing but these are very short, terse, powerful statements that proclaim the identity between Jivatma and the Paramatma. That is they're called Mahavakyas. These are the 4 Mahavakyas that we come across. But there are many other Mahavakyas. There are plenty of Mahavakyas, but those are the 4 important ones that you see. For myself, I've listed few of the other Mahavakyas, and then which is Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya, and then again, it's not doesn't come from Upanishad, from YogaKshema, which is an introductory text called Prakarana Grantha. Ekam eva dvitiya Brahma soham, that is I am he. Sarvam khalvidam Brahma ishavasya, Chandogya Upanishad. Uttishtata Jagrata Prapya Varani Bodhata, and then Amritasya Putraha, that we are all children of immortality. If I'm correct, it comes from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. But I would say modern Mahavakya, at least for me, are these 2, which is Atmano Mokshartam Jagadhitayacha and Shivajnane Jiva Seva. That is, Atmano Mokshartam Jagadhitayacha is for one's own freedom and for also the welfare of the world. Again, if you only think about just ourselves, we've still not understood completely the interconnectedness of things and beings. So it's not just for one's own salvation, but it should also be along with the welfare of the world. And Shiva Jnane Jiva Seva. When you do the seva, don't see the person as, oh, pavam, somebody who doesn't have enough, and so I want to do that, but rather see the Shiva or the divine presence in each of that person and then serve. Because usually whenever we donate, especially the ads that we get on the internet, you feel so sympathetic to begin with and empathize, and then we donate. Rather than that, even just moving, seeing that person just suffering, that jiva, why should one suffer? Seeing that Shiva in that jiva, if we just serve, that itself is enough. Okay. So this message of Vedanta, what we're saying, coming to the just 3 points at the end, practical essence of Vedanta. This, what does that mean? That self is within, that Brahman is within, right? That is that manifestation of within. There has to be, it's a continuous effort, and it is until our last breath. The only thing we need to make sure that we don't stagnate. That stagnation in spiritual life and doubts. Not to have any doubts and not to stop putting that effort. These 2 things are extremely important. I just put this matchstick because there's one way of easily remembering, reminding ourselves, if we show the little kid and say that there is fire in this matchstick, the kid cannot understand, because there is fire potential, it is there, right? Only when you strike that match and show, see, that's that fire. It is like that for all of us. We are those little kids. No matter how much we know, intellectually we know, we are that same, the divinity is within each and every one of us. We can say that intellectually, but when it comes to practice, it becomes very difficult. So just remembering that matchstick is going to be enough, is what I feel. That's why I put that thing. And because we cannot stagnate, we have to keep moving on. Again, these are, we can just say as affirmations, we can use Charaiveti, keep moving, do not stagnate. And this, take refuge in the buddhi, extremely important one. That higher center, we have that intellectual capability, that Buddha Sharanam Anvicha. It's part of the shloka in Bhagavad Gita. It says, take refuge in your intellect, in your buddhi. That means the evolved part of the brain. That is what makes us human, this higher center of the brain, which is so highly evolved in humans. This part of the brain which makes us human and separates out from the rest of the animals. Otherwise, we would be living in an instinct manner, just like other animals. So, how do we do this again? Only when we renunciate the lower self, our petty self. We get caught up in little things, to renounce that and to keep manifesting that higher self of ours. That is the practical aspect of Vedanta. And to conclude, just 3 aspects that we need to remember. See, we think we're human beings. Once in a while, when we meditate or when we do puja, we kind of think of our divine nature. Actually, we are spiritual beings going through human experience. So man's real nature is divine. And it's not just in Upanishad, it says, even in Christianity, they call it as light, divine source, divine presence, they say. In all religions also say the same thing. So man's real nature is divinity. And the aim and goal of human life, it's our birthright to be able to realize this divinity and to manifest this divinity that's already within us. And yeah, as I said, all religions essentially say the same thing. And I also add one more thing. As we are manifesting this divinity in ourselves, to also help manifest the same divinity in others also, we can add to that. So is it possible? And Vivekananda says, first you have faith in man first, and then having faith in him, believe that if there are defects in him, and if he makes mistakes, and if he embraces the crudest and the vilest doctrines, believe that it is not from his real nature. His real nature is divine, but it is from the want of higher ideals. Just having the ideals at the thought level is not going to be enough. We have to practice it, right? And it shows in our actions. That is how it is shown in each and every thing that we do. And if a man goes towards what is false, it's because he cannot get what is true. Therefore, the only method of correcting what is false is by supplying that person with what is true. That's what I mean by this is how we can manifest the divinity in others, by giving the kind of messages, what he says. Keep reminding of ourselves and others of this message. So in conclusion, those three aspects, that we all have this divinity within us, and the goal of human life, and it's also our birthright, is to manifest this divinity. And also the goal of human life is also to help manifest the divinity in others. If you have any questions, I'll take. Otherwise, I'll just end with a couple of poems that I have. Yes.
I think this conclusion helps how to accept.
Yes, absolutely. And they'll forget. We have to keep giving that message, reminding of ourselves and others.
Few slides ago, you were mentioning about don't have doubts. I'm assuming what you are meaning by that is don't have doubts in yourself, don't have self-doubts.
That also. Because what is this faith? Another way of understanding this is, Vivekananda says, if you don't believe in yourself, if you don't have faith in yourself, you cannot have faith in God. Because it's the same God which is present in you also, right? That means we're belittling ourselves if we don't have, we might falter, we might fail, that does not matter. But until and unless we have faith in ourselves, you cannot have faith in God, he says. He even goes to the extent of saying, old religion said, an atheist is one who does not believe in God. And he says the new religion, that means he's talking about Upanishad and Vedanta. The new religion says an atheist is one who does not believe in himself. So powerful. And so many times we lose faith in ourselves. It happens. We're humans going through human experience. That's what we have to keep saying. Shall I end with a couple of, again, been focusing on implementation. It says we have been trying so much and so hard. That is the first thing, that kashta, tumba hard. So I always say, ishta patkon maadi ava kashta hogatte. It means kashta means difficult. Ishta means you like and you do it, and then it will go. So I chose a poem for us to remind ourselves, about the Chinese bamboo tree, how it grows, right? And that's in a form of a poem for somebody who may not know about that. I'll just read it out. Or somebody else want to read this? Ramaa, you want to read that out?
No, I can't see from here.
Okay. A lesson from the Chinese bamboo tree. You take a little seed, plant it, water it, and fertilize it for a whole year. and nothing happens. The second year, you water it and fertilize it, and nothing happens. Third year, you water it, you fertilize it, and still nothing happens. How discouraging this becomes. The fourth year, you water it and you fertilize it, and nothing happens. This is really frustrating. The fifth year, you continue to water and fertilize the seed, and then you take note something during the fifth year. The Chinese bamboo tree sprouts and grows 90 feet in 6 weeks. Life is much akin to the growing process of the Chinese bamboo tree. It's often discouraging. We seemingly do things right and nothing happens. But for those who do things right and are not discouraged and are persistent, things will happen. And finally, we begin to receive the rewards. So, having been at this in a conscious, deliberate way, I can tell you, we have to keep going and going. And it's not even waiting for so many years like it grows. We have to learn to focus on little things that has helped us, that we have changed. Because of our innate negative bias, we forget the things that we have either conquered our mind at times, that mind chapter, or the repetitive thoughts that haunt us again and again, and figure out different ways of conquering that and keep focusing on that. I think that is the key. And then it's a Zen koan, upright, flexible, not a koan, just a short poem. Upright, flexible, never too full of itself, honest like bamboo. I like the one, never full of itself, because it's quite hollow inside, right? Bamboo. It's honest like bamboo. And the next poem is in Kannada. Read it to you. Bamboo shoot, it's called in Kannada, Kanale. And it's a poem that's written by one of our faculty members. Her name is Sudha Sharma. She also was influenced by YogaKshema, and she has started her very first positive psychology magazine in Canada. It's called Profit Plus, and she has her own YouTube channel called Bharavase. And she has written this poem. I think it won some award also. I'll read that out. Because we're talking about bamboo, I just want to end in a different note. How bamboo, it's hollow. What all the things that can happen. How I talked about fulfillment, right? We need to be working towards fulfillment. We can use bamboo for many different things, whether it's furniture or for bamboo shoot. We even make soups and pickles also, bamboo shoot pickles. But how can a bamboo get fulfilled? It's a creative imagination of a poet. I'll read that out and then say just the last 2 lines I'll translate. Kanale ಕೊಳಲು ಉಗುರು ಮೊನೆ ತಾಗಿದರೂ ರಕ್ತ ಜಿನುಗಿಸಿ ಹಸಿರೆಲೆ ಅಳಡಿಯಲ್ಲೇ ಹಣಕಿ ಹಸಿರೆಲೆಗಳಡಿಯಲ್ಲೇ ಹಣಹಣಿಕಿ ಮುಗಿಲೆಡೆಗೆ ನೋಡುತ್ತಿರುವ ಪಡುಗೆಂಪಿನ ಕಣಲೆ ನಾನು. ಬಿಟ್ಟು ಬಿಡು ಈಗ ನನ್ನ ಸುತ್ತಿರುವ ಪೊರೆಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಹರಿದು ಹಸಿರ ತುದಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಬಿದಿರಾದಾಗ ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಕೊಳಲು ಮಾಡಿ ಉಸಿರಿಟ್ಟರೂ ನಾನಾಗುವೆ ನೂರಾರು ಹೊನ್ನರಾದ. Means talks about when the bamboo is young, it is quite sharp. Even if it touches, you bleed, right? Because it's so sharp. But it says, you leave me alone. I'll grow into a tall bamboo tree, and then you take me out. And out of that, make a flute. And then even if you just breathe into that float, I come out as beautiful music, and that beautiful music can be offered to Krishna. That is kind of the implied meaning. That is when a bamboo gets fulfilled, its life gets fulfilled. That even when you breathe, it comes out as a beautiful music. And lastly, I end with this. This poem was claims to be written by a saint, Christian saint, Saint Teresa of Avila. This is like the pinnacle for our implementation of the Upanishad message. How does it matter? As I said, all religions say the same thing. And along with this, before I read this, I will tell about one more mystic, Sufi mystic, who said, I went looking for God, I found myself. I say, I went looking for myself, I found God. One and the same, right? Tattvamasi, aham brahmasmi. These are the mystics. Their language is different, but they've experienced. They're not just poets writing. Even poets, they get that flash of insight and they write. It's not about that. They've lived this life. Kabir is another mystic. His Kabir songs are amazing. If he was not experienced, he would not be able to, right? So a Sufi mystic did that, and now a Christian mystic says, Christ has no body. Christ has no body but yours. Christ has no hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Yours are the hands, yours are the feet, yours are the eyes, and you are his body. Christ has no body but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes with which he looks compassion on this world. Christ has no body now on earth but yours.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you.
Really enjoyed.
I will leave.
Sure.
Thank you very
Sure,
much. It
Prashant.
was very nice to
Sure.